Do you ever hear that little nagging voice in your head that says, I'm not a real artist? Sometimes it feels like no matter how much time or love you put into creating your artwork, that little voice is always there to remind you that you're an imposter. At least that's how it's felt for me as someone who's relatively new to the art world, especially in my first year or so. Luckily, I've learned a thing or two about not letting that little voice have too much power over me. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about how I've learned to manage imposter syndrome as a beginner artist. As I chat about this, I'm also going to take you along as I paint a super simple blue baking supply scene, and then I'm going to turn it into a seamlessly repeating pattern in Photoshop. So I'm going to start by telling you a little bit about my journey to even feeling comfortable calling myself an artist, and then I'll walk you through a few mindset shifts that have helped me work through my imposter syndrome. So let's get right into it.
I didn't really embrace my artistic side until I was about 24 or 25 years old. While I know that 25 is still quite young, I've always weirdly felt like I was constantly playing catch-up when I compared myself to the artists I admire who seem to have been born with a pencil in their hand and filling sketchbooks before they could even talk. I watch so many YouTube videos of artists who talk about how they've always known that they wanted to be an artist. And as much as I love watching and learning from these people, I also often leave these videos thinking, well, I haven't always known that I want to be an artist. So does that mean that I'm not a real artist then? In my case, I have always been a creative person, even from a young age. But I've also always had a strong analytical brain, and I certainly haven't always thought of myself as an artist. There were times growing up when my creativity manifested itself in the way that you might traditionally expect from a young artist, with pencils and sketchbooks in hand. But as much as I loved it, it was actually really rare for me to sit down and draw anything. I never took art classes, and I always just figured it out as I went. And my typical pattern involved getting randomly inspired, pouring hours into a drawing, and then abandoning it before I ever finished it. And then rinse and repeat every few months or so. At this point in time, I certainly did not consider myself an artist. I just thought of myself as someone who liked to draw every once in a while. At the same time, I was studying a lot of math and science, and I eventually went to college and graduate school to pursue degrees in ecology and environmental science. During these years, I found myself separating more from the traditional artwork that I used to create on occasion. I still drew, but I only opened up my sketchbook once or twice a semester. Even so, I always did find myself going back to it because it gave me comfort and it was something that lit me up inside. Looking back at it now, I think there were so many signs that there's always been this artist identity inside me, but during these years, when I was in school, I started to lean a bit too far into the logic side of things, and I definitely did not spend enough time nurturing my creative side. At this point, I think I was the farthest from considering myself an artist that I'd ever been. So fast forward to when I was just graduating with my master's degree at the age of 24, nearly 25. I had 3 months before my full-time job was supposed to start, and after years and years of suppressing my creative side, I found myself in the midst of a creative explosion during those months when I had virtually no responsibilities, no essays to write, and no academic gold stars to earn. I started painting nonstop. I don't know why I picked that medium. I had never been a painter before, and I felt so much resistance anytime I had tried to pick up a paintbrush in the past. But for whatever reason, I was really drawn to watercolor, and once I started, I couldn't stop. My paintings were not good at the beginning, and I created artwork from such a stiff place. I was so intimidated by the blank page, and a bit overwhelmed as I tried to learn everything I could about watercolor techniques and paper and brushes. However, this was the first time in my life that I was regularly creating artwork. Nearly every day, I sat with my paints and created something new. Still, though, I was very resistant to the idea of calling myself an artist. Yes, I was painting nearly every day, and yes, I started to see some big improvements over time as I kept practicing, but I still just thought of myself as a person who painted sometimes, not an artist. I think in my mind, I thought to be an artist, you needed to have a certain size body of work, or maybe a deeper understanding of technique or art history. It felt like there must certainly be some kind of qualifications you have to have before you can earn that coveted title of artist. And whatever those qualifications were, I was certain that I did not have them. To be completely honest, I think I felt like I was also kind of protecting myself by not calling myself an artist. Like, if I was just a person who painted sometimes, I wouldn't have to deal with these imaginary critics who might look down on me, just some random person with no background in art, for daring to call myself an artist. Of course, I now know that this was all a very classic manifestation of imposter syndrome, and it's been a little over a year and a half since then, and I've since embraced the artist title, even though I still feel like I have so much to learn and that I'm still figuring it out every day. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to dealing with imposter syndrome, but there are a few big mindset shifts that have helped me embrace my identity as an artist. Firstly, and I think most importantly, I've redefined the word artist. While in the past I thought you had to somehow earn the title, or maybe even be given it by somebody else, I've since come to terms with the fact that an artist is a person who makes art. You don't have to have gone to art school to be an artist. You don't have to make money from your work to be an artist. You don't have to know art history or have a favorite painter from the Impressionist era to be an artist. You simply have to be a person who creates art. Now, I want to be clear that I'm not minimizing the artists who are all of those things. That's so wonderful, and I really admire those people. And I know that there's so much you can learn about art in a place like art school. But it was really eye-opening for me when I realized that all those people who did go to art school didn't just become artists once they graduated. Nope. Those people almost certainly had created a ton of art before even applying to art school. They were already artists. The same is true for people who make money from their artwork. It's not like somebody just decided to pay them to create artwork when they never made anything before. Again, these people almost certainly had already been creating well before anyone ever paid them a penny. So by changing my own definition of an artist to a person who creates art, I was able to majorly expand my own understanding of who gets to carry that title. If you're waiting for permission from somebody to call yourself an artist, I want you to ask yourself if you're a person who creates art. If so, congratulations, you're an artist. Now, this is all well and good, but I know that at least for me, even after I had redefined what I knew as an artist, I still struggled with feeling like I wasn't good enough to really earn that title. So that's where my next tip comes in, which is to remember that everyone was once a beginner. I know that you may have heard this advice a million times before, but the beauty of living in today's world is that there are actually ways we can validate that claim. Something I find myself doing all the time is finding my favorite artists on Instagram and scrolling way back to their very first posts. Sometimes this takes a really long time because you might be scrolling all the way back to 2013 or 2014, but it's still something I really recommend to anyone who's struggling with this feeling that your artwork isn't good enough. Pretty much any time I've done this, I've been able to see amazing growth over the years. And more often than not, those early posts are far from the level of refinement or skill that you see in more recent posts. Time and time again, when I do this, I see proof that as long as you just keep creating, your skills and artistic voice will develop over time. And that leads me nicely to my third tip for overcoming imposter syndrome as a beginner artist, which is to document your progress. As amazing as it is to see other artists' progress over time, I promise you that it's even more amazing to see your own progress. If any of you are like me and have perfectionist tendencies, you'll probably often fall into the trap of looking at a piece of art you've created and seeing nothing but the mistakes or the things that you don't love about it. Now, I think that there can be a productive way of critiquing our own art, but I also know that there are a lot of people who just get completely discouraged when all they see is everything that they wish they'd done differently. Then they'll go and scroll through Instagram and see the beautiful artwork that other people have made and get stuck in this comparison trap, thinking that their own flawed artwork will never amount to the pieces that other artists have made. But what I think is super important to note here is that everybody has these thoughts. I bet even those artists you admire so much look at pieces that other artists have made and feel that same pang of jealousy. So you might be wondering what any of this has to do with documenting your own work, and to that I say that the only artist you should be comparing yourself to is yourself. You will never have the exact circumstances that led another artist to develop the skills and the style that they have. You'll only have the circumstances that led you to exactly where you are right now. While there's so much that we can learn by studying other artists' work, if we're not careful, it can also lead us to feel like our own work isn't good enough. By documenting your own progress, you can have a record of how you've grown and improved over time. You don't even have to document it publicly, although I think there are lots of benefits to doing that too. If you want, you can just take pictures of your artwork on your phone if you create with traditional media, or if you create digital artwork, you can save it in a way that you can access it again later. Trust me, I know that especially when you're hypercritical of your own work, it can be kind of painful and a little cringe to take pictures of work that you're not super proud of, but you just need to tell yourself, 1 year from now, when I've had so much more practice, I'm going to be so excited to see how far I've come.
Okay, so I'm about 1.5 years into my journey of regularly creating art, and imposter syndrome definitely hasn't gone away. The thing is, I'm not sure that it ever will. There are always going to be people who I look up to and who I see as more deserving of that artist title than I am. But despite that, I also know that creating art is something that truly lights me up inside like nothing else I've ever experienced in this life. And that's really all the confirmation that I need to tell me that I am no imposter. I'm doing exactly what I should be. And my gut feeling is if you've made it this far into the video, well, I think you're there too. So if you enjoyed this video, I think you'd also get a lot of value from this video here, where I talk about the mindset shift that led me to choose joy in my life rather than chasing these societal expectations and definitions of success. And with that, thank you very much for being here, and I'll see you very soon for my next video. Take care, everyone.